Happy St. Patrick's Day, sir.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you and John Layfield. This guy said you suck. Not me. He said you suck.
This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained?
Wow, thank you. That is just fantastic. A guy could get used to that. But ladies and gentlemen, look in the sponsor opportunity green room. You'll see WWE Hall of Famer turned rugby advocate John Bradshaw Layfield and his pal King Gift Egbelu, the Inventor Awards, prepping for what you can see on the Your Company Name Here slate to be a very full, exciting show, including Irish rugby legend George Hook waiting in the wings, calling in from Dublin. So let's bring in John and Gift now. Guys, I think we were, 54 and 33 collectively? That's a pretty good week. I know that you guys don't like accolades or taking bows because, you're so good at this. But we do have to say, John, you get a rose pinned on your nose because you were 6-0 in MLR bets and then 9-0 across the board. Congratulations, John.
Why would I want something stupid like a rose pinned on my nose?
Because you're from Texas.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
Texas rose.
One of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I don't doubt later in the show you'll say the dumbest thing ever.
That maybe George Hook will say was the dumbest thing ever. All right.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Follow the trend.
What are the odds?
Pretty safe bet.
Kidding aside, that's a great week.
That's not a joke.
He was 9-0, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the Rugby Odds. So if you followed his betting, you'd have made some money. But we have the business of the wooden spoon. There can't be anybody that gets the wooden spoon other than Wales. That's it. No argument, no questions. Welsh Rugby Union, you get the wooden spoon for all of us this week.
I knew something was up in Japan since Godzilla somehow mysteriously disappeared. Kintetsu Liners have reemerged as the Welsh rugby team. Yep, that's where they are. Every one of them.
It all started from last year whenever Kintetsu won. We knew the transfer had begun at that point. It just completed this year.
All right, so a takeaway of sorts from last weekend, it'd be across the board. Gift?
Shout out to Italy, man. Like, you guys have absolutely sucked for so long. Everybody doubted you, trying to boot you. But whenever you get the power of...
Boot you, Italy.
Power of petty plus youth, plus removing a really curmudgeon-y coach, Italy just rising up, man. Rise up like the pizzas that people have surpassed your ability to make, man. I love it.
Rise up, pizza people. John?
I completely agree with Italy. Rise up, pizza people. Congratulations to Italy. That was a great Six Nations. They could have had another win if they had a referee's decision that wasn't so skewed toward the home team.
Oh.
But MLR, I watched a ton of MLR all 3 weeks. I love the rugby there. I think it's great. I think they're playing hard, and I think there's incredible parity this year, except for Anthem, that's to be expected. New team, it's more of a developmental team. But except for Anthem, the other 11 teams, a lot of parity. You're going to see some great games. We got some great games coming up this week between some really good teams.
All right, I want to look down under to Super Rugby. The Crusaders are 0-4. They could very well be 0-5 coming up after this weekend because they've got a very tough test.
Kintetsu Liners, I'm telling you, it's contagious.
Well, the Crusaders have had a almost funny spate of injuries because it's just everybody's hurt. They must win. They can't go 0-5.
They can. They can't. They lose. They're 0-5.
I can't see it.
That was one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard.
Well,
I bet you make a dumber statement later.
Let's see. Let's bring in George Hook now.
Ingrid says there's a spider in the ceiling.
There's a spider in the ceiling, says Mrs. Hook. So let's welcome in Mr. George Hook.
Let's go.
Yes, George Hook is here.
Yes. George, as always, it's a pleasure. We're through with the Six Nations, George. How you feeling about it?
Well, I mean, you have to feel pretty high as an Irishman if you win. 2 championships in a row, which I think we don't do very often. You got to be pretty happy about it. I'm not happy about the game. That's my problem.
Okay,
So
all right.
I'm not happy, but I am incredibly cheered as always by Rugby from America and the Spielberg Hanks mini-series Masters of the Air. So, and then I'm swapping that with Manhunt. We're chasing John Wilkes Booth at the moment. He's just killed what's his face, Lincoln, in the theater. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm up to. My love of America will never cease.
You know, you ought to be doing reviews because you gave us the thing about Napoleon. I watched Napoleon. You know, the people are just living in a nice house, right? And they got in trouble for it. But let's talk about some stuff specifically about the Six Nations. Okay. You're an Irishman. You dyed in the wool green. Are you happy? Are you satisfied with this victory, or did you want the Grand Slam? Do you feel empty?
Not at all. I mean, the Grand Slam is more difficult than people give it credit for. I mean, you've got to win 5 games. Even in the old days when it was only 4, you had to win 4 or 5 games in a very short envelope of time. So it's very difficult to do. We win the championship. So then, of course, the Irish were not happy because, you know, it's not champagne rugby all the way. A great philosopher, not my friend Homer or my friend Nostradamus, but another philosopher said, whose name I can't remember because he was Irish, he said, a win is a win is a win. So I'm taking it. On the other hand, Gatland continues to plumb depths of crap that even I didn't think. You know, he's won 2 Six Nations games out of 16, and then heroically and generously he offers his resignation. Certainly, because the Welsh were in so much manure they couldn't take it. Like, Wales were awful. There are no words. I checked in my Cambridge dictionary.
But they're young, George. They're young. It's the youth movement, right?
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. How old was Joan of Arc when they burned her at the stake? You know, even Jesus was only 33 and he saved the world. So, I mean, don't give me this young stuff, all right? Don't give me this young stuff. Now, look what Gatland did. He picks Tompkins and North in the centre. He drops them and he brings in 2 kids. 2 kids of a horror. So he drops them and he brings back Tompkins and North again a week later. Now, if you don't know what your centre combination is, you shouldn't be coaching the team. I don't know any coach in World Rugby who'd survive with Gatland's record. Wales are awful. They cannot pass it, they cannot catch it, they cannot hold it. They are beyond belief. Rumours have it. Now, this is only a rumour, but you could be the first to hear it. They may be replaced by Hong Kong in next year's Six Nations Championship. It's only a rumour, but you never know.
We're American. We'll believe anything.
That's them sorted, okay?
How much would you have given to be the guy on the other side of the desk when Warren walks in with his resignation? Would you just, okay, thanks, Warren. See ya.
No, you see, that's why he walked in. De Gaulle used to do this every 6 weeks. In France, he used to say, hey, I am heading off to Toulouse des Églises, and I'm going to resign. And the French said, General, don't resign. So, I mean, this is an old trick. The resignation trick.
Very French, as you say.
Very crap. Really.
Very crap. Yeah. All right, hold on.
Meme sentence right there. Meme sentence.
We have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub. The Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
And we're back. So, George, let's skip around a little bit here. If you were the manager or the coach or the director of rugby of an all 6 Nations team, out of these players, this pool, who would be your captain?
Well, that's very interesting because I think this year, I think the captains haven't been very good. Like, if you look at each team, there hasn't been an outstanding individual. That's why Ireland went for Peter O'Mahony in the twilight of a career, who can't actually play 80 minutes of international rugby and may have played his last game for Ireland. They went for him as captain because there's just a shortage of leaders. So looking at it, I'd go for Lamaro of Italy on the basis that he was the most influential captain for his team. I was very impressed by him.
Do you think that Italy should be the most proud of what they achieved, or what team should be the most proud of what they achieved in this 6 Nations?
No, you got to go for Italy. Like, Italy have been the punch bags of European rugby since it came into this championship. Just before they made the 6 Nations, they had an Argentinian fly half called Dominguez. He actually scored 946 points in his career for Italy. And I remember them beating Ireland. My first ever television job was Italy beating Ireland. Oof. And then they came into the 6 Nations, didn't win a match, didn't beat anybody, week after week after week. They're the punchbacks. Now, you look at their under-20s, who put 47 points past Scotland. They're robbed against France by an appalling referee decision on the ball falling over. They're super. And I thought they were very good.
And they've been fixed by the Irish. So you guys are undermining yourselves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we started it all. It's the Catholic thing, we're kind of all believers in Adam and Eve and the rib and the apple and the serpent and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So we kind of translate that to our rugby. That's why Italian and Irish rugby is quite similar in that regard.
Well, that's a great segue for John to step in because he loves all that stuff.
Hey, George, look, we know who's number one. Ireland is number one. We know who's number 6 only because they couldn't be lower, and that's Wales. How would you rank, irregardless of points, 2 through 5?
Did you say irregardless? That is not a word.
It's a
George,
word.
you shut up.
George, help me out here.
You know anything about Homer, Adam and Eve, Nostradamus? Nothing. You don't. I'm talking to Mr. Hook, a philosopher and a wise man.
So I apologize, George.
I think there's more to the 6 Nations under the surface, as it were, than there is on face value. And it's an incredibly pertinent question, because you wouldn't have asked the question, rank them 2nd to 5th, if you didn't think there was a reason for maybe changing it. And you're right. France it's a great old phrase, but they have flattered to deceive. And there's a coaching problem in France. That's obvious. They were lucky to suddenly discover the scrum half halfway through the championship. English rugby now is everything you love or hate about the English people as a nation. English rugby, you can imagine them there saying to Hitler, come on over. We're going to fight you on the beaches. We're going to fight you in the fields. We're never going to give in. So that Englishness is there.
The Englishness.
Who did they absolutely think was the great guy? George Ford. They'd be calling for his head for about 3 years. And suddenly now, Ford is the greatest thing that ever lived. Ford hasn't changed. He's the same George Ford. Yeah. Kicks the hell out of the ball. Do I like Marcus Smith? I don't. I just don't like him.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why.
That's Gift's guy. Got to be careful.
I don't know why. I just don't like him. And I think there's an exaggerated opinion of his talents. So I think Scotland were the 2nd best team in the championship. Scotland could have won 5 matches. Like, if Scotland had actually kept a cool head, they could have won 5. They didn't know how to win. That was part of the problem. In every sport, winning is a habit. And they don't have the winning habit. I don't think France were the second best team in the championship at all. And if the Italian result had happened as it should have happened, they wouldn't have been second. So I think the short answer to John's question is Scotland 2, England 3, France 4.
Whose team culture has the highest chance of being consistent winners in maybe over the course of the next 2 to 5 years?
You can't look further than Italy. Casada's a great coach. The work he's done for Italy is outstanding. They are playing the best rugby in the championship. The quality of their back play is outstanding. Their defense improved match by match by match. I think you've got to keep an eye on them. I think they're going to be really interesting. There's just a trapdoor waiting for Wales. Like where Wales are going to go now is anybody's guess. And it's not just Wales, it's the game in Wales. I'm older than the three of you combined. Now, when I would watch Wales, and I'd buy the programme when I stood in the standing room in the Havelock Square end of Lansdowne Road, you see, he was a carpenter, he was a coal miner, he was an electrician. You know, there was the whole thing about where they came from and the whole thing about the chapel on Sunday. Wales had a culture, a tradition, everything. That's gone. That's just gone.
Well, hey, they're mining. They're just mining Bitcoin now. That's all. It's just a different kind of mining, right?
That could be the dumbest comment ever.
It's on the teleprompter.
Ever. Now, it's rarely we can say ever, because normally every week we say that's the dumbest comment ever. But that is the dumbest comment ever.
Thank you.
Ever.
Thank you. Any superlative is a good superlative. But on that note, George, we're out of time. I want to thank Mr. George Hook for coming on, gentlemen.
Yeah, George Hook is the best.
Yeah.
More George.
Yeah.
More George.
Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. From New York City comes America's longest running and most popular rugby show. The biggest names in Major League Rugby, MLR highlights, and big match previews. Rugby Wrap-Up presents MLR Weekly, made in New York City. And we're back. And we're back after having George Hook
I told
on.
you you'd say something dumber.
You know what? I get dumbed down with you guys. No offense, but you guys are so dumb.
George
that
Hook said it was the dumbest thing ever. I concur.
I have to dumb it down with you guys.
I
So,
thought you were dumb early in the show, but I had a feeling you'd get dumber as we went on.
United Rugby Championship are back in action, guys. Let's talk about them for a bit. John.
My favorite league. I love URC. Here's what I think. I think the South African teams playing at home have been rested, and I think they got a Lions Den buzzsaw waiting on the boys coming down south. So Edinburgh's going down there. Stormers are given 10.5. I think the Stormers roll them boys, despite the fact that Edinburgh is a good side. I think because of the situation, I think the Stormers win and win easy.
Well, you got that thing called the 6 Nations, and all those teams from Europe are going to have that hangover. Gift, what are you looking at?
As that hangover goes, I look at that and see what's happening in Connacht. Look, as we talk about the South African teams, constant elevation, but it's always a tough one to play in Ireland. But I look at the Lions to be able to cover the score, 9.5 points. I think that's a lot from the Lions, especially as John said, they've been sitting, they're hungry, they're ready to take a bite out of life, and I do think that they're going to cover the spread, though they're not going to get the win.
I'm going to go with the Sharks hosting Ulster. They got to win, and they're
How many
rested.
weeks have you been saying that?
A lot. All of them.
Last week, they got to win one. And if you'd have been listening to you say that, you'd have lost a ton of money.
I'm taking the Sharks this week against Ulster, but I think it's going to be very, very close.
You believe the Crusaders are going to get a win and not lose 6 in a row. So
They can't
what
go
can you
0-5. They can't go 0-5.
You know, I wish I was there to just punch you both in the face right now. No offense. No offense. Let's move on to the MLR, fellas. One quick takeaway, either of the upcoming weekend or last weekend in the MLR before we each pick one match each.
Yeah, like Old Glory, right when I praised their kicker, they had problems with their kicker. Like Old Glory's a good side, but the Chicago is too. I mean, you got some really good teams. Chicago's solid this year. Dallas is playing incredibly well. Now, they've not had great competition, but they played incredible, except for the first game against San Diego. You got some really good teams that have come in. I think it's going to be an exciting season.
Nola Gold, once again, I've said they are having their best start in 3 years. And even with this New England game that they lost, it was still a game that they were able to catch up with in the second half. That being said, they're going to have to get some situational awareness with their kicking. But I do appreciate what Gold has been doing. So I'm really happy to see what we got going down in New Orleans.
I like what's going on with Seattle and Houston. Seattle hosting Houston in the upcoming weekend's matches. But now let's each take one match that we like and give a reason why. John.
I'm going to take that match because I think that's the two undefeated teams. I think this is the premier match of the weekend. You've got some great games this weekend. But I think Seattle at home is almost unbeatable. And so I'm going to take Seattle over those good old boys from Texas.
And that's a -3 spread as per our rugby wrap-up crack staff. Gift.
Look, man, I got to take a look at that Dallas versus Gold game. Of course, I'm going to pick the Gold. Shocker, shocker, shocker. But I really have a lot of questions on how good this Dallas team is. And I think the Gold are going to be able to carry this one on the road. Again, back-to-back weeks. Gold putting their stake down inside Dallas.
Well, Gift, Dallas, if it comes down to a kicking battle, Dallas has the advantage there because Elias is having a great season, whereas there's questions at the number 10 position right now for Nala.
I don't think it worries about a kicking game when they force teams to not be able to move the ball well.
All right. I think LA is going to get their first win at home. They're a better team than their record indicates, and I think they're finally gelling. I think they're a good, solid side. And I think they get their first win of the year versus Utah, who have to be bruised and battered, and they're coming down from the mountains, Gift, and you know how that goes.
Two more big games. Old Glory hosting San Diego. That's going to be a great game. And Chicago hosting the Free Jackals. Chicago could pull the upset.
And a Super Rugby pick. John.
Brumbies.
Why?
Because they're playing at home, and they're going to win. That's why.
Gift.
Fijian Drua over the Waratahs. They're at home. When they are on the island of Fiji,
bam!
Those Aussies aren't going to know what's going to hit them.
Bam!
Okay. Blues hosting the Crusaders. The Blues, 5.5-point favorites. I know that the Crusaders are up against it, but I'm taking the Crusaders and the points. To the Premiership. We'll come back north.
This is an edit. You just said Premiership, George. Thinking George Hook is still here. You're the worst host ever. So anyway, we'll take over this for this point going forward. Saracens versus Quins. This is going to be a heck of a game. Here's how you bet. One of two ways. If Jamie George and Maro Itoje are playing, along with Owen Farrell, bet Saracens. If those two guys are not, George and Itoje, because of the rest from the 6 Nations, bet Quins.
Gift.
Look, Northampton has been the sneaky horse in this whole thing. They're coming off rest. I know they're still going to be hungry, even though the Bristol Bears are the greatest spoilers in Premiership history, in my opinion. They always want to make me look bad, and I take it personally. So I really expect Northampton to really go ahead and do their damage on this one.
I like Exeter versus Newcastle, and I like the over in that match. Let's take a quick break. You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we're back. Let's go to the NRL in the other code. John.
Roosters over Rabbitohs.
Ooh, Gift.
Man, the rematch, Broncos versus Panthers. My boy absolutely is still dying from the Broncos losing, but I look at the Broncos to be able to cover. They've been iffy a little bit, but they played well in Vegas. They played well last week. Panthers are, mid-tier right now. Look for Broncos to cover the 10.5. Boom.
Let's go to Japan Rugby League 1, but a couple of notes. 2 one-point wins or losses, depending on your perspective as a fan, had fans cheering and simultaneously reeling. One of those matches was between my Suntory Goliath and Gift's Toyota Verblitz. And John, your Kintetsu Liners came within a point of beating the Miami Heat or tying the Miami Heat. They lost by a point. With that, 1 pick each. John.
What does the great philosopher Ricky Bobby say? Second place is your first loser. That's Kintetsu. Kintetsu, I got on record, is back from playing in the Welsh jerseys in the Six Nations. And they're now playing in their Japanese Pro 14 jerseys, and they're going to lose to Kabuto Spears.
The Pro 14, is that a new league, John?
Yeah, it's in Japan.
Pro 14.
Kintetsu has no idea what league they're playing in. That's the key.
And neither do you. Gift.
Hey, man, look, Verblitz lost a close one to the Sun Goliath, man. So somebody's got to pay. And the blue Revs are already blue, so whenever you see the beat down, you're not going to see any changes on them. So look for Verblitz to be able to get that, get the win, do some damage.
And I'm taking the Dino Boars over the Honda Heat by a lot. And last but not least, in our professional leagues, before we do our pick of the week and get the hell out of here, we have the top 14, which is really difficult to pick, but we're going to go with John first.
What does that say to the few people who watch our show that we got to get the hell out of here?
I got to get the hell out of here because I got to get away from YouTube.
That is so disrespectful to the 2 or 3 people that actually watch this show.
Absolutely.
So I'm going Bordeaux Bagels over Toulouse, Bordeaux at home, Bordeaux.
Gift.
Castro over Racing 92. It's a home game. There's literally no other analysis needed.
Bam!
I'm taking Toulouse on the road against John's Bordeaux if DuPont is in the lineup. Picks of the week. John.
I think one of the games of the week, there's a couple. Seattle and Houston's going to be a great game. Chicago and the Free Jacks is going to be a great game. Dallas and Nala is going to be a great game. But starts off with Old Glory hosting San Diego. This is going to be a freaking barn burner. The books have been pricing things, I believe, wrong. I believe Old Glory is going to be the dog here. Right now, they're the dog by 4 points. I think they're probably going to be more once the game starts. I'm going to take Old Glory to cover. Not sure they win, but I think it's going to be close. And Old Glory at home, I think Old Glory has a really good chance of winning. I think they cover.
Gift.
Got to take it back down to the NRL. I've been taking the time to try and learn a little bit more of rugby league since they went to Vegas. And I got to look at Sea Eagles versus the Parramatta Eels. Parramatta Eels suddenly starting to get their little bit of rise back. But, man, Sea Eagles have been killing it. They've actually been killing it. Look for Manly, our despised rival to our great champ, to be able to now start to take over. Boom. Parramatta Eels are going to fall down to the Sea Eagles. Let's go.
Manly Sea Eagles.
All right, John's Manly Sea Eagles. I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go to that Miami Anthem match in Miami. Unless it's a torrential downpour, I think it's going to be a track meet for tries. I think they score over 50 points collectively. On that note, I want to thank John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE Hall of Famer, King Gift Egbelu, the inventor of words, George Hook, the Irish legend, and thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other shows, including MLR Weekly, the College Rugby Wrap-Up. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Sign up for our weekly newsletter.
Oh my, it's like a yard sale.
And please join our American Red Cross blood donor team.
Like the classified ads.